Yeah, I started writing a bunch of like angry poetry this morning because like I've been thinking a lot about the state of the world and the like hopelessness that I'm feeling. I don't know about you, but 2020 showed us, and onward, showed us that like the system and institutions are really not equipped for anything. And the more time that goes on, the more things that happen, the more it feels like I can't do anything about it. And so then
I think the thing that's been that's been weird to me is the intensity in which like we lived the last like 2 years or whatever, and then just like the complete complacency that humans go back to. Like people were like saying it was going to be like the absolute end of the world, and like we were like that our leaders were like, you know, like whatever. But the moment that like someone who's like milk toast is in power, and like the moment that like we can pretend that like COVID doesn't exist anymore, and like people are just like, people for the most part just want to be able to apathetically like live their lives. And I think that is something that I've noticed that has been weird. And like I think I even feel the same way sometimes, where it's like, I don't know, people are lazy. People
Yeah, I think a lot of people might say that, I can't remember if I asked you this question or if you had answered it. Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
I think I said, I can't even remember what I said for that, but I think I said, no, I think I said we're a blank. I think I said we're like a blank slate. Yeah.
And I agree with that, but also I think that like humans tend towards laziness, like not laziness, but just like the path of least resistance. And I think that's just like,
it's true,
the nature of nature, that it always just finds the thing that pushes back on it the least. And it makes it easy for us to, like, regardless of whatever crisis is happening, if we can doom scroll on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, then it doesn't even really matter what is going on, because whatever, like there's nothing we can really like do about it. And so the thing that I was writing about is also, I definitely use poetry and music to cathartically get through emotions and experiences and stuff. And just, I write all these things out, and the nugget that came out eventually is that we actually really can do something, but we as individuals can't really do anything. And so I think that's the really isolating part. That's the hard part in this experience that we're having, is that we really do feel extremely alone. And quarantine exacerbated that feeling, and everyone felt extremely alone. And now that even we don't have to be anymore, that we can actually be out in public some more, we kind of got used to just being alone, and we don't really like it, but we got used to it. And so again, sort of the path of least resistance, I speak we as if I'm like speaking for everyone. It became easy to just stay inside and not talk to anyone and just keep to ourselves, whenever there is actually a lot we can do. And you had mentioned that you went to protests a lot, and that's something I've
noticed that the amount of, I don't know, maybe it's also because I'm less involved because I've been like busier with like doing like school and art and like and work, that I haven't like been, maybe it's that I haven't been as engaged in political activism. But I felt like there was, I don't know, I feel like there was constantly more like protest work going on in the city, like during like the height of COVID, when like people were I don't know.
They needed it.
Yeah. I feel like people needed. People were angry and people were. Yeah, I think they needed it. I think that's true. I don't know. I think that I feel like I've learned a lot from like engaging like in activism with other people and stuff, and I've never quite been the person that's like been the leader in those situations. Like I have friends in the city, like my friend Corbin, who like does like different like coalitions and like what's the word? Not nonprofit. It's like when you're like working with like an organization of other people to like
Yeah, well, just like an organization designed to like create change.
yeah, I just can't remember what the word is. I'm like drawing a blank. Gosh. Well, it's whatever. Like I I don't know. I've just learned a lot about the nature of people through that, and like why people do what they do, and like why people feel the need to like do certain things to help, and like a lot of times there's people that like do stuff like that just because they want to be in a leadership position, and it kind of reminds me of like growing up in the church almost, like when I go help with like if I go like help with like mutual aid type stuff. Yeah. Like it reminds me of growing up in the church where I'm like, you see some people that like are like really care about it and like are legitimately about the cause and like are like some of the nicest, like most down to earth people. And there's other people that just like want to be seen doing good things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was actually like thinking, this is funny. I was actually thinking about this in the shower today because like I saw Snarky Puppy last night with my friend Griff because he like had tickets, and I don't know. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you go last night?
No.
Okay. Well, it was really cool, and like I'm not much of a like jazz person. I'm not like that's just like I grew up like listening to blues and stuff, but like the more like technical stuff like just has never been my thing. But like I like watching it, and I think that like in a live setting it's really cool. But I ran into my old youth pastor there, and I was just thinking about like different like leaders in church that I like grew up with and stuff. And like so like I don't know, it's fun, it's hard because like even though like I don't agree with like the way the church does things or like certain aspects of that, I feel like there was people that like I went that were like leaders, like certain youth pastors I had and stuff that like really did care about me. You know what I mean? Or like really did care about like helping kids and stuff. And like it's weird to see people from like different ends of like the political spectrum and like ideas of morality and stuff and be like, oh, this person like really does care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I have a hard time like writing people off because of that, because of like that growing up experience where I'm like, okay, like this person really did like want to invest in me and like invest in other people. And like I remember I had this youth pastor and like he was like one of the coolest dudes, and he like if people would like you like if you heard like a kid use the word gay or whatever, he'd be like don't do that, that's like that's bullying, like this and that, like and I'm sure he still like held like with homophobic views and stuff, but like the fact that as a kid that he was like trying to make like church feel like a safe space and like don't like he like if people like if he heard anyone like used hate speech like at church, like he would be like mad at them and like talk to them about like why it was wrong and stuff. And like I think to me that was like I was like, oh, this dude rocks, like he's so cool for that. You know, and I don't know, it's just like I think growing up in the church makes me apprehensive to trust people, period though, like in that sense where I'm like, okay, why is this person doing this? Like, is it because they like want to be a leader and want to like be viewed as like a strong like figure? Or is it because like they actually are trying to make a change? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can it be both?
I think it's definitely both. I think it's even both for me sometimes. I mean, like whenever you think about like the stuff like you were talking about earlier, like is there anything we can do to like change things? Like I don't know.
So two things came to mind as you were talking about that, and one is that statistically younger generations are continuing to go to church less. It's just like every generation that goes by, they go to church less and are less religious. And so we in the absence of religion and church, we're kind of looking for something else to fill that gap, to give us purpose. And so, and this is something I talked to Dave Hannon about, that...
Who's Dave Hannon?
He's a musician. He's in Gonzo Labronzo.
Cool.
And he talked about how, like, yeah, we're using politics sometimes as like our church, and it's like, this is what we're going to worship now, or this is what we're going to like throw all our focus on now. And so, yeah, there are some people that like go into those spaces and treat it in some ways like that kind of thing. And yeah, there are some people that are seeking to be leaders, that are looking for admiration, they're looking for stuff. That same thing happens in church, where it's like, oh, I'm a youth pastor, I'm like a pastor, I'm, you know, the leader of this thing.
This
and
is
like
my identity.
Yeah. And people are looking at me for this. But at the same time, in the other way that church fulfilled a thing where it's like, here's a purpose for you, that those people that were actually invested in you and the youth and wanted to actually make sure that people were getting better and were getting the care that they needed, that actually was their purpose and their vocation, if you will. And so the thing is that we can still do that outside of church, and we can actually provide that kind of space for people, regardless of if Christ is at the center of it. And there is a community regardless, and everyone can find a niche or a community that will actually like care for them, and that you can care for too. And I mean, for me, I think it's like the music scene. And even though I'm not as like active in it as I would like to be, I also still have.
You're pretty like, active in it, dude.
I am getting people on the podcast and trying to like connect people that way.
You've been doing it for a minute.
Yeah, that's an understatement, but that.
Well, you know, I know you've been doing it for like what, 6 years?
Yeah.
It's a long time. Yeah.
For any podcast, and like, yeah, I'm proud of that.
That is crazy. Like that you were doing it like when I was like had just got my driver's license.
Yeah, shit, you're young.
Well, you know, I'm 22. I'm okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm young.
I'm young. Yeah.
I'm young too. But yeah, the little. But yeah, I mean, in some ways, like for me, in an absence of church, I find purpose through talking to people about deep shit, you know? So, and giving voice to people in the music scene. And no matter where I am, I'm always going to value.
You were Catholic, right?
I was Catholic, yeah.
So like, what was your experience like in the Catholic Church, like that you feel like was different than like what you've heard or what you've seen in people that grew up in like Protestant churches?
There's a little bit less of a cult of personality because the foundation of the church is always present. So in what I've seen, and this is just my perspective, what I've seen in Protestant churches is that like the pastor is the beacon, even though the pastor is saying like, you know, Christ is the beacon, like the pastor is this charismatic person that brings all the people together, that everyone is looking to, and they're listening to his usually word.
In Oklahoma, pretty much exclusively his.
Yeah. And so, and then, you know, the people under him will be like, so yeah, there's like the youth pastor and the worship leader and the, you know, the women's leader and the mother's leader. Yeah. And all of these people are like kind of serving, yes, God in a way, but still every church, and there's so many churches in Oklahoma that like, it's not like everyone is so structured around God. Everyone is structured around that specific building and who runs that building and the cult of personality that is the foundation for that building, which is the main pastor. And what's different in the Catholic Church is that yes, there's the priests, and the nuns if there are any, and there's still worship leaders sometimes, but it's usually like
or like a youth outreach
choir
person.
director. Yeah, there's usually like the head of the youth group, but they always defer to the church, which is like an actual organization that is helmed from fucking Rome. And like there's the catechism of the Catholic Church that we can like literally refer to, like, oh, on page whatever, or like section blank of blank, this is the policy that the Catholic Church has about blank. And that's something that like someone can't just make that up. Someone can't just choose to interpret something from the Bible the way that they decide to, because like there is a ranking, or there's a pecking order that like someone can check on and be like, yeah, the church has already said something about this. This is what it says. And this is going to sound mean, for those that don't want to dig any deeper and don't want to think for themselves, that makes it really easy for you.
To just show up.
Yeah, you show up, they tell you what to think, and it's like, cool, that's what I agree with. And for a long time, I was like, I want to agree with this. And I was seeking to agree with it. And I kept asking questions, and I kept trying to like figure it out. And the more that I dug, the farther away I got from it, because the answers weren't sufficient enough for me, and they didn't love enough. I wanted to love more than the church did. Ultimately, that's kind of what did me in, that I was trying to love more than the church allowed me to. And I think that's the falling out that a lot of people have, is that like, what about this person? Don't they deserve love? And they're like, well, they're bad because blank. And a lot of people just hate the hypocrisy of churches. And that drives people away, that like, a lot of things that atheists say or agnostics say is like, oh, like, I'm okay with God, I just hate his fan club. And yeah, but all that to summarize is that, yeah, the Catholic experience is a little bit different, because we can always like refer back to the Catholic Church, the foundation that was set from St. Peter fucking forever ago. Right. And, you can say what you will about the corruption and the millions of people that are contributing to the thousands of years of systemic oppression
that the Catholic Church has done.
Yeah. But like, it's still, foundational. It's something that anyone can refer to and be like, wow, this, has been here for years. So I guess, yeah, if you're looking for structure, it's there, as opposed to a scrappy church led by a young pastor that just got enough money to like have a small building that is on the brink of collapse any day now. And as soon as, it's revealed that the pastor cheated on his wife, then no one goes to that church anymore.
Yeah, that stuff has happened for sure.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I think...
Or that the pastor is gay. That stuff also happened.
But I think I think that, I don't know, there's interesting, like, there, like, the digger you deep into, like, it's like older churches that have more structure in like terms of Baptist churches and stuff. Like, there are churches that are like part of like Baptist denominations that do have some kind of thing they refer to, but like the churches that have like a younger crowd are usually like non-denominational, like Life Church and stuff like that. And they, they don't really have. Mm-hmm. Life Church is funny though. I think all of that stuff is kind of funny. Like Christian media is so funny, dude. Christian media is awesome. Like from an ironic standpoint of view, like Christian media rocks. It's so that's one thing that I always struggled with. Like when I, no, you're good. That's one thing I always struggled with was like, well, it's like, why is so much Christian media bad? Like, why is it so cringe? And like, there is stuff that's like legitimately, there is some things that are like good. Like there are some Christian bands that I liked as a kid that I think still hold up. Like I think Jars of Clay is still cool. I think Gun Gear, I don't know how you say it. It's like, I don't know, it's like a Christian band. I can't remember what it was called, but or how to pronounce it at least. The first concert I ever went to was a Switchfoot concert.
Nice. Yeah. And that's funny is for bands, like the better Christian bands are like the bands that happen to be Christian rather than Christian music bands. And so I think Reliant K
is cool.
Is a Christian band. Sue John Stevens is a Christian artist, but he like doesn't make, I mean,
he's also gay and pretty open-minded.
Sure. But like, you know, in the end, it's, if you dig down deep enough into the art, it's like, oh, and God. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah,
for sure.
So, I mean, Kanye is a Christian artist. Kendrick Lamar is a Christian artist. So yeah, with those as well, it's like, if you dig down deep enough, the art will,
you don't have to dig very deep
ultimately
for
say,
Kanye.
yeah. Kendrick is pretty upfront about it.
Kendrick's upfront about it for sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's where like the good media comes from. Whereas like, yeah, the cringe media that comes from, I don't know how so many things can be said in the Christian music medium, you know, like, have you not said everything? I feel like they've said everything.
You mean like that you can?
Yeah.
I think there are some artists who do stuff that's like provocative that are Christians that has like blown my mind. I like there's this one artist called King's Kaleidoscope, and whenever I was like still going to church and like a part of the church, he has this song, I can't remember what it was called. It's called A Prayer, but like I can't remember what he was going through, but he was just like going through like a really rough time, like either with his church or I think he had like a kid like die and like stillborn or something. Yeah. Like just going through a horrible rough time. And he has this song where he's like, I don't know, but he like used the F word in the song. And the Baptist denomination like was like, you can't like do you know where OBU is, the college? Yeah, OBU is like, you can't play here anymore and stuff, and was like mad at him for like using the F word. But like he was describing like how much pain that he was in, and like how like in the song he's like, Jesus, he's like, where are you, like where are you, and then the song has like a 2-minute silence that is like representing of like how he feels like he can't hear God. And then it comes back in and like from the perspective of Jesus and is like I'm like right beside you, like I love you. But like the way that it's done is so like, a lot of Christian media to me just feels like inauthentic praise, and like doesn't deal with any other aspect of a relationship with a God other than like, oh, like you're so good, I love you. Like all of those things totally can be true if someone has a relationship with God, for sure. But like the aspect of feeling doubt and feeling like lost and feeling like really not okay, and like to the point of feeling like I feel fucked, like that is a real aspect of life. And like the fact that it feels like Christians ignore that in their media, like that these feelings that you're having, like when I see someone that is like a Christian, like acknowledging that, like in their art, I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, I believe you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I believe you. Like, I don't believe, like, if you don't have any doubt or like concerns or struggles, like, I don't believe you as a Christian. Like, I think if someone is not like having doubt, I don't think they're searching hard enough. Yeah. Like, I don't think they're like actively trying to see what they actually believe. Because I think most people don't test what they believe.
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of people test what they believe, but maybe don't get the space to do so.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, I don't know. And it might also be that, like, you know, it's totally okay to be an NPC. Like, you could totally just like do your job and be cool with it and not expect any change from your life. Like, honestly, you did it. Like you figured it out. And we as like creatives or whatever who are always like challenging ourselves and like never satisfied, we like look at that and be like, how can you live like this? But honestly, like, cool, you did it. and so
Yeah. I guess you're right. Being content can be nice.
and yeah, sometimes that does mean is like, oh, you go to church and it's like you pray and do the stuff that they tell you. And it's like, yeah, that's enough for me. It's like, wow, really? It's like, yeah. Wow, okay, cool. And yeah, maybe you should be digging deeper. Why aren't you struggling? And it's like, I'm good.
I don't know. I've had conversations with my dad before where I've literally been like, I like don't understand, like, how have you ever questioned? He's like, no, like I just know, like I know that this is true, and I know that, like, I don't know. The thing about like never comparing like the historical accuracy of the Bible to anything other than itself has always been something that like frustrates me. But like,
you can find proof of this within the document itself.
Yeah, right. But like, and not to say that like it's not true completely, because I can't prove anything for certain, but like, I mean,
I can certainly give you resources.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, in terms of like, I'm not here to be like, I don't know. I don't want to be one of those people who's like, you got the fucking fairy tale. Like, that's not me. Like, that's not my mission. But like,
me neither.
But I don't know. I still think, like, for me, I like just want to know what's true so bad.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know like what's true and what's right and like what the right thing is to do. Like, I think growing up in church gave me like this OCD, like anxiety around like, am I doing like what's moral? Am I doing what's right? Like, I constantly think about it, sometimes to the point of like doing the wrong thing because I overthink it. But like, I think that, and it's just, I think the thing that makes me sad is that like my parents and a lot of Christians will think that like the reason that I'm doing these things is because it's easier and it's like sin, and it's like my sin nature that's like leading me to do like whatever, when the truth is like I'm thinking about it really hard, and these decisions are not things that I'm like doing out of like ease and like whatever's the easiest.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember I don't know, my mom and like my dad sometimes would just be like, I feel like you're just doing this because it's easiest. And it's like, really? Like, I'm choosing to live like not go to church and live a different life than you because it's easiest for me to like have conflict with my parents, like ignore the culture that I grew up in, and like it's not
basically not be in touch with all the people that you grew up with.
Yeah, you grew up with. Yeah, like be considered like a weirdo for like the way that I present myself, like with basically everyone that I would have grown up with as a kid. Like, it's not easy. Like, it's hard. It's, if anything, it's harder. It's just like, but like at a certain point, you kind of just gotta, I don't know, do whatever you feel is best.
Yeah, and it's something else that I do have to bring up is privilege, in that, there are some people that have like figured it out and, you know, are fully content with their life, and they go to church and the church gives them the answers that they need and all that stuff. And it's like, wouldn't it be nice, right? To like be the kind of person that isn't fucked with every day against their will. Mm-hmm. Right. And so being queer or being a person of color, like you have no choice but to struggle because everything else is struggling against you just existing. And so, like, yeah, there are some people that have figured it out, but they also do sit nicely in that range of privilege that allows them not to be fucked with.
I think that's ultimately what made me leave the church, is because, like, I don't know, because it's like, even I could get behind the idea of them like disagreeing with other people's, I don't know, it's fucked up either way, but like I could understand how they're like, okay, this book says that this is not okay, that being gay is not okay, that being XYZ is not okay in my eyes, so I have to, like, I understand why like it's so stupid, but like I get I get it, but what I don't understand is like what that has to do with like how you treat someone, you know what I mean? Or like how you, like they're just like isolating, like the church's audience is people, and they're just isolating their audience. Like it's the church will die because it will not evolve, and it's really sad. And I think I just don't understand, like, I don't know.
People will interpret the Bible however the fuck they want.
That's true.
And so it's not even so much that the Bible says that being gay is bad, because it also kind of doesn't.
It kind of says, well, from what I've heard, like I've heard a lot of different things, but one of the things I've heard is that like it was like the way it was interpreted was basically like don't be a pedophile in some of the verses, like because like historically, like I don't know,
it basically says like the word that has been translated
is like boy love.
Yeah. It's like
love,
don't be a male prostitute, a young boyish male prostitute. Don't sleep with them. You will not inherit the kingdom of God if you sleep with these male concubines or whatever.
Right.
And so I'm sure there are places where those still exist. And to acknowledge the historical context in which the book of Leviticus was written is that it was a set of rules
written for nomadic people,
Levitican priests. And so these are the chosen people of God. And if you follow these rules, you will inherit the kingdom of God, according to the Old Testament.
Isn't like Leviticus like pre-agricultural revolution? Like it's like real, it's like crazy old, right?
It's pretty old, but it's not quite that old. I mean, the Old Testament is about like being hospitable in the desert. Like right. If you're not being hospitable in the desert, then God gets angry at you, which is why he blew up Sodom and Gomorrah. Like it wasn't because they were having butt sex. It was because whenever God sent his like envoys down, they like threatened to like rape and kill them. Which is bad. Yes. And it's like, no, the desert is an inhospitable place. You should be hospitable to people. You should be generous to your guests, because if you are out there and you need help in the desert, then you will need it too. So if we all protect each other in the desert, we can make it a bit more hospitable. And I keep bringing up the desert because it's relevant to where it was written, which is why it encourages circumcision, because if you get a bunch of sand in your dick, it'll get infected and you'll die. And the people who cut off their foreskin didn't get their dicks infected and they lived. And so they're like, look, God's chosen people have cut off their foreskin and they survive better. So these are the chosen people of God because they're alive. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I don't know. I just remember growing up in the church and like feeling like, I don't know, like having done like things that were like, I don't know, just being a person who's like, I don't know, being a person who's bi and like, just like having this feeling of like also, I don't know, of like also liking girls and just being like, well, like I should just like drop this other part of me. Like it's in like, it's not worth the struggle. Like it's not worth it. Like it's so like, I need to just pretend like that these parts of me don't exist, because if I don't know, if I do, like my life is going to be like more inconvenient, and like, but it's still like just being something in the back of my head that was like, this sucks.
Yeah. And going back to the whole people will use the Bible to interpret whatever the fuck they want, is that Western or WASPs don't like gays. They already have that bias. And so they just look for ways in which the Bible will help them continue to interpret it that way. And so regardless of what the Bible actually says, they're going to find the thing in it that will justify their hatred of certain people. And so you can use the Bible to justify slavery. You can use the Bible to justify white people being superior to black people. You can use the Bible to justify like being violent towards whoever the fuck you want. And if you're biased enough and don't really have to think about it that hard, you can just interpret the Bible to say whatever you want it.
It's a pretty good story.
Yeah. But like, it's not just a story. It gives you a whole bunch of like guidelines.
Rules and guidelines.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like, I don't know, they're like all of those, like all the three Judeo-Christian like religions, like the main three, Abrahamic religions. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I find a huge fascination in them. And I think they're good stories. I think the Quran's a good story. I think that, like, you know, I think that they're like, I don't know. I think if they weren't good books, they probably wouldn't still be around. But maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think that's necessarily. Yeah, well,
you don't think they're particularly good books?
Well, it's more about what has been invested in it, right? Like, so
that's true.
and I think this is going to be a seemingly wild analogy here, but like, the good music doesn't just rise to the top. That's just not true. Like, if some did I say this to you? Like, there's a Chinese teenager that plays guitar better than anyone in the world, and you will never hear them.
Or not even just that, because technicality isn't everything. There's someone who writes a beautiful. I get like the sentiment is there's someone who writes beautiful songs that we'll never hear.
Yeah. And that's like, there is no. You have to combine all of the things. You have to combine marketing with image, with luck, with just, you know, it's an investment. The music industry is an investment, and
it's gambling.
Yeah. And so,
do you think that is what the religions are though? Like, do you think, or like religious texts are? Do you think like there's nothing particularly special about the Bible versus like other, like, I'm trying to think of like other like religions that were a thing around the same time, like, you know, like not Byzantine. I'm thinking of like Babylonian stories and stuff like that. Do you think there was nothing like particularly amazing about it? It just like was the thing that rose to the top, and because of history and like luck and
yeah. I mean, like, there's tons of books now that you could just go to the library, and there's probably a book that says like how to live your life the best way, and you can read that book and you can make a religion out of it personally, right? Like, you could just follow all the guidelines in that book, and you could probably live a pretty decent life for that random book I just made up. And that book doesn't have thousands of years of history and cultic followers like building it up, but like, it exists now, and you could follow that book. Like, there's tons of books that you could read now and make a religion out of it personally. And yeah, they don't have that like context, but you know, everything just kind of flows downward, I guess, in that, like I said, the Old Testament was written in the desert, and the people who followed these rules survived. And so they decided to be like God's chosen people, and they followed these rules and they survived. And like, that became significant because it allowed them to survive. And so then if you hold on to these rules, you get to be part of the club that lives.
Right. It's interesting. One thing I find myself thinking about is like, it's interesting that, like you said, people have used the Bible to basically literally pretty much everything. Like, Christianity has been like everything. Like, it's like been like Christian God has like been the freedom for people that are like enslaved, whether it be like the Jews or like people like singing like gospel hymns like in chattel slavery or like whatever, like God has been like the freedom for like a lot of people, but like it's also been the thing that's used to like enslave people, like to like it's just so it's been everything, and it's so weird, and like it's so, for me that's like what makes it so confusing is like it's like you said, it's really been used for to pretty much as the like to back it's been used to back pretty much everything like that you can imagine.
Yeah. Does the KKK member worship the same God as the one suffering under Jim Crow?
It's so I mean I don't think so, but
and so
it is weird. It is really, really weird. Like that like this like one book has been like such a like I don't know, it's just so weird.
Right. And I mean we can make a religion out of anything. That's kind of more the point I'm making is, you know, we can make a religion out of science, we can make a religion out of politics, we can make a religion out of whatever, and we make a religion out of our jobs as well. So like this is actually something
I definitely do that.
Again, Dave Hannon sent me this thing that was like this author and like I think journalist, researcher, or whatever.
Is he a Christian?
Dave, no, I don't think so. No. I don't think he would describe himself that way. But yeah, he sent me this thing, this podcast where she was talking about how the workplace has become the church, and all of the important decisions that we make are based around our jobs. Whereas, you know, maybe in the 1940s or something would have been based around like our community and our church. And so what like, oh, we can move to this neighborhood and like, let's say if you're Catholic, we can move to this neighborhood and there's a Catholic church nearby. So I want to like be in this neighborhood. Whereas now it's like, oh, I want to live in a neighborhood where my commute to my job isn't as bad. And we make important life decisions based on that. And it's like people are like less and less getting married and having kids as well. And it's just like, I think people's careers in general are just like becoming a bigger, like, I mean, my parents at my age were married and my mom had already had, I think my sister and maybe even me at 22. Yeah.
And so like, there is this weird feeling of like, I have invested in something completely different.
Well, that's also a systemic issue about like one, generational wealth, and like how much minimum wage hasn't changed in the time. So it's like, yeah.
My parents definitely didn't have money. They just had kids. Like,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
right. But they were still able to like live.
That's true. They did. Even yeah, we did not die. That is true. You're right. They were still able to like pay rent and feed us hamburger helper and whatever. Yeah.
And the fact that like, yeah, my mom went to college in the 80s. She was a exchange student.
From where?
From Venezuela. And yeah, like she worked part-time as a waitress at a restaurant and was a full-time exchange student in Miami, Oklahoma.
What a place.
Right. And it's like, that is unfathomable today, you know? Like,
yeah.
There is no way.
I remember I was talking, I can't remember, it was like someone that I was like friends with that like I was talking, and then they were talking about how like their dad got here by like driving from like, I can't remember, it was Ecuador. It was like, it was somewhere in South America, like just driving to America, like at like 16, like, or 16 or 17. I just remember thinking like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I can't even imagine, like, I have like, God, I can't imagine, like, I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine.
the economy, the systems, whatever, like a lot of shit happened in the 80s. And so, yeah, everything's been set up to make those things way more complicated or way more difficult. Voting is harder now. Traveling is harder now. College is way more expensive. Jobs don't pay as much. Our degrees aren't really worth anything. Blah, blah, blah. These are the things that people our age are worried about. And again, going back to it, feel like we can't do anything about.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating to feel like I still feel like a child because of the systems that I've like, I don't know, that like are like, I don't know, like the fact that like I can't, like that rent is so expensive that like I could either cheat, for at least for me because of the economic place that I was in, like I could either choose to go to school and live with my parents, or I could choose to move out and like just like work full time to like pay rent. Like I couldn't do both. And I think there's a lot of kids and people that are in that same, obviously there's a lot of people that are in that place, but I do think like it made me feel like in college, it has made me feel like a child in some ways, because it's frustrating that like I'm still living at home and like living under my parents' rules and stuff at like, well, I don't really live under their rules as much because I'm a grown person, but like it's still like, you still have to be, you still have to kind of care about like what they think and what they feel. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to be respectful. You have to be respectful of their house and the way that they choose to live and the way that you choose to live. And I think that, that is one thing that has been frustrating, is like to work really hard to like get part of my school paid off, and then the rest is just gonna like be debt and still have to like live at home and do these things. But like, it's still intensely privileged that I'm even going to college and that I have the thing to live at home.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that your problem isn't real though. And that doesn't mean like
a lot of people have that.
Yeah. Everyone has privileges and everyone has problems. And just because you have privilege doesn't mean that you don't have problems. That's something that I feel like everyone kind of fluctuates on, and is like, wow, I'm really privileged in this regard. Like I live in the United States. I don't live in like fucking Sri Lanka or something. I don't know what's going on in Sri Lanka, but like, and like, yeah, that's a level of privilege. But like also, if you do still have like thousands of dollars in student debt, like,
it is frustrating.
That's a real ass problem. And yeah, you don't have it the worst, but like that doesn't mean that you don't have problems. And
my manager Don, who you had on not that long ago, from the drummer from Lust Online, he was talking to me when we were talking about student debt, and he was like, just don't pay it. He was like, there's no debtor's jail, just don't pay it. If nobody pays it, then none of us have to pay it. And I'm like, and I was like, I kind of think about that. I'm like, yeah, what if we all just don't pay it?
Right. Yeah. And so that actually, yeah, that's the other nugget that I came across as I was writing this angry poetry, is that like we can organize, like we can. The reason that, for example, the FDIC was created was that like banks have to have a certain amount of money in them. But if everyone just decides to pull all their money out of a bank and they don't have that money, like people just like won't get their money. And the FDIC ensures like a certain amount of money in everyone's bank account so that this thing doesn't happen. So that even if there is a run on the bank, people can still get like their money because it's supposed to be their money. We can totally organize and be like, get a group going and decide that like, yeah, this many like thousands of people are going to decide to stop paying their student debt. What will happen? And so like, but that's the thing, we have to be organized about it, right? And so if we all vote, if we all get together and fucking show up at Supreme Court justices' houses, if we all like, we can be fucking scary, right? Like as an individual, like sure you can
be annoying,
right? Yeah, or you can fucking buy a gun and kill tens of people
in Minecraft. I'm just kidding.
No, but I'm saying that like these are things that the system allows us to do, and maybe the system doesn't want us to do these things.
I thought you were being like, you go kill. I was like, you can.
No,
kill.
I'm not telling you to go do this. I'm
yeah.
saying this that like we are able to do that, and that's kind of fucked
and stuff. Yeah. I don't know why my brain just was like, I thought you were saying like in a praxis way, you're like you can kill legislators. I was like in Minecraft.
In a praxis way, throw cake at the Mona Lisa. That did things, right?
No. But you're saying like we are able to.
Yeah, if we organize.
Yeah.
And so
it is like the whole, I don't know, man, the whole gun situation is crazy.
Well, I mean, they set up a system that allows everyone to have a gun. If you want a gun, you can get one for a certain amount of money, pretty easily.
I've never really looked into it, and I'm not very like educated on terms of like how hard it is like to actually like get a gun. Like I've never. Have you like tried or like looked into it?
No. I'm a pacifist. I will not have a gun.
Right.
Pretty much ever. And also like, you know, like people's mental health around you is a real thing to like be concerned about. So like if you personally are not in a mentally healthy place, maybe you should not have a gun.
Or if you have someone in your household,
disposal. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not saying everyone buy a gun. That's not a thing that I'm saying, but I'm saying that like it's relatively easy to like the guy that shot up the Tulsa hospital bought a gun at a gun show like a week or so before, and then bought an AR-15 at a gun store the day of the
That's what I think is so funny, that people are like well, the bad guys will still get the guns. It's like people are getting these legally.
Yeah.
Like everyone who's like, I don't know. It's insane.
Yeah. And so if you as a responsible gun owner are willing to make the sacrifice of like, one of my best friends is a hunter. That is his hobby. He likes guns. And so it makes complete sense to me that like, yeah, you use guns to hunt. It's a hobby. It's, you know, it's a dangerous hobby. Guns are dangerous. But like, you know, driving a motorcycle is really fucking dangerous. Just driving a car is fucking dangerous. But like, you know, cars aren't specifically designed to kill people, but guns are. And so,
you know, I don't know if you need an AR to like to hunt elk or deer.
An AR-15 is like a decent rifle for shooting at long distances. The fact that it's become the shooting rifle, like the public shooting rifle or school shooting rifle, is really weird, because like in a shooting situation where you're in like enclosed spaces, a handgun is actually the better weapon to do so. Once again, I'm definitely not saying to, like, please do not fly me, do not put me on any list. I'm not saying, I'm just speaking straight facts here that like in a close situation, a handgun is the better thing to use.
I do think, I don't know. My thing is like, I do think we should still, the way I see it, that's hard is because I feel like it's more complicated than people would like it to be. I think that we do live in a country where the police have like systemically oppressed people of color and other people. And I feel like I think that the way it should be it's hard because I do believe that we should be able to still own, I feel like people should still be able to own guns to some extent, just because like people need to be able to defend themselves like from the state, especially people of color. I feel like I totally understand right now, like if someone like a person of color feels like they have to like have a gun to protect themselves from the state. And like I think there's a lot of socialists now and like people on the left that are starting to feel that way too, that are like starting to feel like more complicated about the gun issue and like less of like, I don't know, of just being like overall guns are bad. Cause like I do think that they are like a tool, and but I think it's hard because like in some senses, like I feel like that we should just view guns like they do in like Japan and some other countries where it's like, okay, like you should have to get a like essentially like go to what is like a driver license course and like go and like learn how to use it, learn how to protect yourself, learn how to, again, if you're not doing those things, like, you know, like make it like, you know, make it more difficult. But the problem is if you do that, then like the people that are that might need to defend themselves, that are systematically oppressed, are going to be less likely to be able to gain them.
Yeah.
So like if we do all that stuff, it's definitely going to be the people that suffer from that are like people of color or people like in lower economic standing. Like, do you know what I mean?
Everything has nuance.
Yeah.
To get on the news after a school shooting and talk about we should have less doors in and out of the school the day of the shooting, you haven't spent enough time thinking about this problem and trying to inject nuance into this subject, right? So I'm speaking about Ted Cruz. Yes.
And like, honestly, all of these laws, the thing that sucks is like all these laws just end up being laws that are like used to like harass Black teenagers in lower income areas, like putting metal detectors in and like.
And that's not even necessarily like a goal of the law, in the same way that the Bible can be used to interpret however the fuck you want it to be interpreted. You can use laws to enforce however you want to enforce. And so if you make it to where, oh, like these certain things are illegal in certain places, then it is up to the enforcer to interpret how they get to enforce those laws. And that's something that we should question as a society. Right. And so like, yeah, you are allowed to have a gun in this society, but are you? Because it's up to the enforcer to decide if you're allowed to have a gun in this society.
Right.
And so is it really legal to own a gun if the cop can shoot you anyways and get away with it?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, but if you are a white gun owner, it doesn't affect you as much because you are less likely to, you're still likely
to be harassed.
Yeah,
stopped.
You're still likely to be killed. You know, not saying that white people don't also get harassed, but you know, those are also those tend to be like people in lower income areas. And so like, yeah, everything has context and nuance, and the things that we do have like systemic effects.
I think that's the thing that's hard is like when shootings and stuff happen, like that's what's taken away. It's like, it's the context and the nuanced conversation is like, it's just fear, and it's hard, especially whenever there's like this aspect of it that's like when the people that are going and doing the shooting are like the 4chan, like like people that are like white supremacists, like the dude who shot up at Buffalo and stuff. Like, it's hard because it's like, well, like he got that gun legally, and like he's like, and you know, like that's the other side of it, is like that person is hurting people, and like if we would have had gun restrictions, like that would have kept other people from, like, it's just,
yeah, everything we do has effects. And so it's up to us, one, to have the conversation, but we've had the conversation, like maybe not you and I, but like
not
collectively,
up to us as you and me, up to us as collectively as a society, right? Yeah.
The American zeitgeist has had the conversation about guns. We've had it for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been having it since Sandy Hook. I'm tired of the conversation. We know what we need to do. It's just not happening. So what are we going to do? Now the conversation becomes, how are we going to get those in power to do what we want?
What do you feel like needs to be done?
We need to be scary.
No, I mean, in terms of like, what do you feel like needs to be done legislatively to like prevent things like this from?
Oh, all the common sense shit. Like, and honestly, it's nuance. Truly, universal healthcare, universal basic income.
You feel like those things would prevent shootings, because if people had it, I don't know. I don't know.
And which is why I said nuance. Right. So it's like, and you know, we've been talking for a long time. This is already like an over hour long podcast, but like we can get into it a little bit. But more so, the point is that like everything has like downstream effects, and the downstream effects of universal basic income and universal healthcare will reduce a lot
of mental health issues,
of the problems that we're having regarding honestly anything.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think about though, like when I think about that, is the fact that like there are people that like grew up in like immense privilege that like still became school shooters, and I think that that's why I feel like it is innately like both a mental health and like a regulations issue.
Universal healthcare.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, why didn't these people, and like, yeah, there needs to be like a cultural movement surrounding, and like we've already been doing that. We've been doing the cultural work.
Because like Elliot Rodgers, his parents were like super rich.
I don't know who Elliot Rodgers is.
He was like the first like incel killer person. But
like, yeah, we've already been doing the cultural work. We've been doing the sociocultural work that is like, you know, mental health is a real thing, that it's okay to be who you are. And, you know, we're fucking talking during Pride Month. Like these are things that we are culturally doing that like legislatively hasn't gotten to that point. And so I'm saying that in order for the things that we're talking about that we already all pretty much agree with, in order to make the change happen that needs to happen, we need to organize and we need to be scary.
Right.
Whatever that means. But those in power, those that are, you know, writing the laws, and those in super rich that are running corporations need to know that they are not in power, and that we collectively are the power. And so they want really hard to squash unions. They want really hard to squash protests. They want really hard to make it as difficult as possible to vote. They are doing all of these things to make it to where systemically we are not able to use our collective power. We're still scary anyways, and they're terrified of the collective.
I hope so. I hope so.
Why would they immediately start trying to pass a law about, oh, you can't protest outside of Supreme Court
or
justices?
Union busting?
Yeah. So they know the power that we have. So let's use it. And with that, Brandon, thank you so much for doing this with me. This is kind of a long one. Where can people find you and your things? We are, regardless of all the things that we've been talking about, we are but lowly musicians. Where can people listen to you and your music?
You can listen to my music at Spotify, Grandpa Vern. And our Instagram is grand_pa_Vern. We have Facebook, but we pretty much mostly just use Instagram and Spotify as our main things.
Sweet. Yeah. And, you know, support the artists, you know, in the same way that like we as a people have power to create change, we can also have the power to like help each other. And the more we can like support each other's arts, the more we can support each other's creativity, the better this community becomes. And we don't have to rely on like church. Yeah. Once again, I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Brandon Russ.
What Grandpa Vern song is about to play?
Stomp Out.
The cops took another man's life away. There's gonna be a better way. When justice born for me, when racist scum runs the streets. Some got vitriol, some got hate. Bullets back in the face. Still got vitriol, some got hate. Bullets back in the face. Standing unity against the oppressor. Define the aggressor. Stomp out vitriol, stomp out hate. Force justice in the face. Stomp out vitriol, stomp out hate. Force fascists in the face.
You can find everything that I do on my website, SantiagoRamones.com. I make music and produce audio. The music you're hearing now is music I made. You can listen to official releases by Santiago Ramones on Spotify, Apple Music, and the other streaming places. Or you can support me directly by buying my music on Bandcamp. I'm working on Hypothetical, my first singer-songwriter album, so if you'd like to hear that at some point, there are lots of ways to support me on my website. There's a Discord server in which we discuss deep topics from the podcast, but it's also a community of beautiful human beings. All the links to all my things are on my website, SantiagoRamones.com. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It would mean a lot to me to hear what you have to say, and it lets others know what to expect, better than I could ever explain. I want to help the world have deeper conversations, so thank you for listening to and supporting Bit Depth. I always end the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong,